Somewhere in America tonight, a locomotive built before you were born is pulling a mile of freight through the dark. Its railroad has tried for decades to retire it. They can't. They've bought newer engines, faster engines, computerized engines, and still these old iron mules refuse to die. Some are older than the companies that own them. These are the 10 freight locomotives that beat every replacement thrown at them. Engineers didn't just keep them, they couldn't let them go. Number 10. EMD F7. Let's start with the machine that didn't just survive its replacements, it erased everything that came before it. When Electromotive rolled out the F7 in February of 1949, steam locomotives still ruled American railroading. 4 years and 10 months later, when the last one left the factory in December 1953, that world was basically over. In that short window, EMD and its Canadian arm built roughly 2,366 cab-equipped A units and around 1,483 cables booster B units, close to 3,850 locomotives in total. That made the F7 the best-selling cab unit of all time. In fact, more F7s were built than every other F-unit model combined. Each one carried a 16-cylinder 567B engine making 1,500 horsepower. On its own, that number sounds modest. But railroads didn't buy them one at a time. They bolted 3 or 4 together and ran them as a single team, and suddenly you had a diesel set that could outpull the biggest steam engines while burning a fraction of the fuel and skipping the water towers and coaling stations entirely. Here's why railroads couldn't let go. The F7 was so reliable and so cheap to run that hundreds of them stayed in regular freight service straight through the 1970s. Some soldiered on into the 1980s and even the 1990s on short lines and in industrial service. Engines that were 40 years old, still earning their keep. 2 railroads assembled the final units, EMD's plant in LaGrange, Illinois, and General Motors Diesel in London, Ontario. The F7 is the locomotive that killed the steam era. It proved a diesel could be bought by the thousand, maintained by anyone, and trusted for decades. Every modern freight engine on this list owes its existence to what this machine started, and that's exactly why so many of them refuse to leave the roster. Number 9. EMD GP9. If the F7 killed steam, the GP9 is the locomotive that quietly took over everything that was left. Built between 1954 and 1963, the GP9 came out of EMD's general purpose line. That's what GP stands for. The very first one, Milwaukee Road number 2400, was completed in January 1954. By the time production ended, EMD had built roughly 4,092 cab units, plus about 165 cable SB units. That's an enormous number, and it tells you exactly how badly railroads wanted this thing. The GP9 carried a 16-cylinder 567C engine making 1,750 horsepower. But its real genius wasn't power, it was the body. Instead of the sleek enclosed car body of the F7, the GP9 used a hood unit design, a narrow engine hood with walkways down each side, and a cab setback for great visibility in both directions. It was cheaper to build, far easier to maintain, and it could work a main line in the morning and shove cars around a yard in the afternoon. One locomotive, every job. That versatility is why steam's last holdouts surrendered to it. Railroads like the Norfolk and Western, one of the very last to run big steam, bought fleets of GP9s specifically to finish off the iron horse for good. And here's the part that makes it a couldn't-replace engine. Decades after the last one was built, hundreds of GP9s are still working. Short lines love them because they're simple, indestructible, and endlessly rebuildable. Major railroads kept rebuilding theirs into GP9U units and other variants well into the modern era. The design was so sound that its DNA, that 567 engine, that hood unit layout, became the template for nearly every American road switcher that followed. The GP9 didn't get replaced because there was never anything wrong with it in the first place. You can't improve your way past, it just works. Number 8. EMD SD9. Now we go from 4 axles to 6, and to a locomotive railroaders loved so much they gave it a nickname usually reserved for luxury cars. The EMD SD9 was built from January 1954 to June 1959, and only 515 of them were made. That's a small number compared to the giants on this list, but the SD9 earned something rarer than volume, a reputation for being nearly unkillable. Crews called it the Cadillac. a 6-axle, 1,750 horsepower machine riding on that same trusty 16-cylinder 567C engine. It spread its weight across 6 powered axles instead of 4, which meant tremendous pulling power at low speed and a gentle footprint on lighter, rougher track. That combination made the SD9 perfect for the ugly, unglamorous work that breaks lesser engines, heavy drag freight over mountain grades, ore trains, branch lines with tired rail. Where a 4-axle engine would spin its wheels, the SD9 just dug in and pulled. Railroads couldn't replace it because it excelled at conditions that never went away. The Southern Pacific ran huge numbers of them, and when the units finally started to wear out, railroads didn't scrap them, they rebuilt them. Many SD9s were torn down and reconstructed with upgraded internals, then sent right back to work. A locomotive designed in the early 1950s was still turning wheels on short lines and regional railroads more than half a century later. The SD9 is proof that raw horsepower isn't what keeps an engine on the roster. It's low-speed grunt, mechanical simplicity, and the ability to take a beating year after year. This was the 6-axle formula that EMD would refine for the next 50 years, and the SD9 was the machine that showed everyone it worked. Railroads held onto their Cadillacs because nothing they could buy did the dirty jobs any better. Number 7. EMD SD45. Every list needs a rebel. The loud, temperamental, gloriously overpowered machine that some railroads simply refused to give up. The EMD SD45 arrived in December 1965 and was built through 1971, with 1,260 units produced. Its headline was jaw-dropping for the time, a 20-cylinder 645 E3 engine cranking out 3,600 horsepower. At its debut, that made it the most powerful single-engine locomotive ever built. You could spot one instantly by the dramatic flared radiator flanks at the rear. Nothing else on the rails looked like it. The very first production unit, Great Northern No. 400, earned the nickname Hustle Muscle because it could drag a fast freight and still have power to spare. But here's the honest part. And this is where the SD45's story gets interesting. That enormous 20-cylinder engine had a serious flaw. Under stress, the crankshaft could actually break. EMD strengthened the block and redesigned the crank, but the damage to its reputation stuck. Many railroads decided the extra 600 horsepower over a standard SD40 just wasn't worth the added fuel and maintenance. On paper, the SD45 should have been quietly retired and forgotten. So why is it on a couldn't replace list? Because a handful of railroads fell in love with it and flat out refused to let go. Montana Rail Link ran a large fleet of 20-cylinder SD45s for decades, keeping those big engines singing over the Rockies long after the rest of the industry moved on. Wisconsin Central once operated the largest fleet of them, buying up second-hand units by the dozen. For crews on those roads, the raw pull and the unmistakable roar of a 20-cylinder 645 was worth every headache. The SD45 is the exception that proves the rule. It wasn't the most reliable engine EMD ever made, but it had a cult following that kept it alive far longer than the numbers said it deserved. Some machines you keep because they're perfect. This one you kept because you loved it. Number 6. EMD GP42. Now we enter the -2 era, the moment EMD figured out how to make a diesel that railroads would never willingly part with. In 1972, EMD upgraded its entire catalog with the -2 line, 40 internal refinements aimed almost entirely at reliability and easier maintenance. The GP42 was the 4-axle high-horsepower member of that family. Built from April 1972 to December 1986, about 1,143 were produced across all variants. Each one packed a turbocharged 16-cylinder 645 E3 engine making a full 3,000 horsepower. Big power in a compact 4-axle package. The turbocharger is the key to the GP42's whole personality. It let a nimble 4-axle locomotive punch far above its size, which made it ideal for fast freight and intermodal, the hot, time-sensitive trains where speed matters more than raw drag. Railroads wanted engines that could keep a priority train moving at track speed, and the GP42 delivered. What made it a keeper was the -2 reliability underneath that power. The modular electronics were easier to diagnose, the components were more robust. When something did go wrong, a shop could fix it faster and get the unit back on the road. In an industry where a locomotive only earns money while it's moving, that turnaround time is everything. That's why GP42s refuse to disappear. Long after EMD stopped building them, they kept running on Class 1 railroads and then flooded onto regional and short-line rosters as bigger roads sold them off. Regionals prized them precisely because they combined real mainline horsepower with a simple, well-understood design that their smaller shops could actually maintain. The GP42 hit a sweet spot that's genuinely hard to hit. Fast enough for premium freight, tough enough to run for 40 years, simple enough to keep alive without a factory. When you build a machine that checks all three boxes, railroads don't replace it. They just keep rebuilding it and running it into the next generation. Number 5. EMD GP38-2. If the GP42 was the fast one, its non-turbocharged cousin was the immortal one, arguably the single hardest locomotive to ever kill. The GP38-2 shared that same -2 rulebook, built from January 1972 through July 1986, with more than 2,200 units produced. It became one of EMD's all-time best sellers, and there was barely a railroad in North America that didn't roster at least a few. Its engine was a 16-cylinder 645E, but here's the crucial difference from the GP42. It was not turbocharged. It used a simple Roots-type blower, making a steady 2,000 horsepower. That single design choice is the whole reason this locomotive is legendary. A turbocharger is a wonderful thing when it works and an expensive, complicated headache when it doesn't. By skipping it, EMD built a locomotive with dramatically fewer things to break. The GP38-2 traded top-end horsepower for something railroads value even more: near total dependability. It would start on the coldest morning, pull all day, and rarely ask for anything in return. That's exactly what made it unreplaceable. For local freights, yard work, branch line runs, and general manifest service, the everyday bread and butter of railroading, you don't need 4,000 screaming horsepower. You need an engine that shows up and works every single day for decades. The GP38-2 is that engine. Today it's the undisputed king of short lines and regional railroads. When a big Class 1 sells off an aging GP38-2, there's a line of smaller operators waiting to buy it, because they know precisely what they're getting: a bulletproof, simple, endlessly rebuildable workhorse. Most of the fleet is still in service, many of the units now well past their 50th birthday. The GP38-2 proves a truth the whole industry eventually learned the hard way. Sometimes the most valuable locomotive isn't the most powerful one. It's the one that never lets you down. Railroads couldn't replace it because they never found anything simpler that did the same job. Number 4. GE 4400 CW. For decades, EMD owned this list. But in 1987, General Electric quietly took the crown as America's top locomotive builder, and this machine is a big reason the throne never went back. The GE 4400 CW entered production in the early 1990s and ran through 2004. With 2,834 units built for North American railroads. The name tells the story: 4,400 horsepower from a 16-cylinder 7FDL engine on a CC 6-axle frame, and the crucial part, AC, for alternating current traction motors. This was one of the first commercially successful high-horsepower AC traction diesels ever built, and it changed what a single locomotive could do. Here's why AC traction was a revolution. Old-style DC traction motors can overheat and burn out when you push maximum power at a crawl. Exactly the situation on a heavy train grinding up a mountain grade. AC motors don't have that limit. They can pour out tremendous tractive effort at walking speed all day without cooking themselves. Suddenly, one AC locomotive could do the work of several older DC units. The customer list reads like a roll call of American railroading. Union Pacific bought the most, around 1,338 of them. CSX took roughly 615, many ordered with 20,000 extra pounds of ballast to grip the rail even harder. Canadian Pacific ran about 438, and Southern Pacific took 279. These weren't niche machines. They became the backbone of heavy-haul freight across the continent. And now, the couldn't-replace part. Rather than retire these engines, railroads are rebuilding them. Union Pacific, CSX, and CPKC have reconstructed hundreds of AC 4400 CWs into modernized units, upgrading the electronics and control systems while keeping the proven frame and engine. Rebuilding an existing unit costs a fraction of buying new, and the bones of the AC 4400 CW are good enough to justify it. That's the ultimate compliment in railroading. When your locomotive is worth rebuilding instead of scrapping, 30 years after it was designed, you didn't just build a good engine, you built a permanent fixture. Number 3. GE-944CW. If the AC4400CW was GE's heavy-haul monster, the -9 was its everyday empire, and it may be the most rebuilt locomotive in modern American history. The GE-944CW, also written C449W, was built from 1993 to 2004, and more than 3,600 of them rolled out of Erie, Pennsylvania. It used the proven 16-cylinder 7FDL engine, making 4,400 horsepower. But unlike the AC4400CW, it stuck with reliable, well-understood DC traction motors. That made it slightly less capable on the steepest grades, and considerably simpler and cheaper to buy and maintain. For most of what railroads do, that was the smarter trade. This locomotive arrived at exactly the right moment. In the 1990s, rail traffic was surging and railroads genuinely couldn't buy power fast enough to keep freight moving. The -9 was the answer, and 2 railroads bought it by the mountain. BNSF was far and away the largest customer, taking almost 1,800 units. Norfolk Southern was the other giant, buying around 1,100 to 1,200, though, being famously conservative, NS ordered its units derated to 4,000 horsepower and called them C49Ws. Then came the twist that defines this engine's legacy. When these -9s aged, railroads faced a choice: scrap them or reinvent them. They chose to reinvent. Norfolk Southern launched a massive program converting its -9 fleet into a brand new model, the AC44C6M, installing modern controls and AC traction onto the original frame and engine. Beginning in late 2013, NS also started re-rating its 4,000 horsepower units back up to their full 4,400 and rebranding them. Why go to all that trouble? Because rebuilding a -9 into a modern AC locomotive costs only about 50 to 60% of buying new, and delivers massive gains in reliability and pulling power. The industry effectively decided that the -9 was too good a foundation to throw away. More than 1,000 of these rebuilds now exist. The -9 didn't get replaced, it got reincarnated, the same iron, wearing a newer soul. Number 2. EMD SD70 Mac. This is the locomotive that started a revolution, the one that changed how every railroad in North America thinks about power. The EMD SD70 Mac was first delivered in December 1993, when Burlington Northern accepted the first of what would become a fleet of hundreds. Production ran through 2004, with a small final batch built for the Alaska Railroad in 2007. In all, more than 1,100 were built. Under the hood sat a 16-cylinder 710 engine making 4,000 horsepower. Later units bumped to 4,300. But the number that mattered wasn't horsepower, it was the AC. The SD70 Mac was the first production alternating current freight locomotive delivered in North America. EMD partnered with the German engineering firm Siemens to make AC traction work in a mainstream American road engine, and the result rewrote the rules. Because AC motors don't burn out at low speed the way DC motors do, a single SD70 Mac could produce staggering sustained pulling power on a crawling heavy train. The impact on Burlington Northern's coal operation was immediate and dramatic. On the endless coal drags out of the Powder River Basin, it used to take around 5 older SD42s to move a train. With SD70 Macs, the same train needed only 3 or 4, and those could be split, with power on the head end and more on the rear, controlled remotely. Fewer locomotives, longer trains, lower cost, BN, and later BNSF, became the model's biggest operator by a wide margin, and other railroads like CSX and the Alaska Railroad followed. Here's why it couldn't be replaced. It didn't just do a job better, it opened a door that could never be closed again. Once railroads saw what AC traction could do, there was no going back to the old way. Every heavy-haul AC locomotive built since, including the GE machines earlier on this list, is walking through the door the SD70 Mac kicked open. Decades later, many are still hauling coal and freight, and the majority of the fleet remains in service. You can't replace the locomotive that started the era you're still living in. Number 1. EMD SD42. And here it is. If there is one locomotive that defines the phrase railroads couldn't replace it, this is the one, the undisputed champion, the EMD SD42. Built from 1972 through the mid-1980s, more than 4,000 SD42s were produced, over 4,036 by most counts, with roughly 1,000 more custom and rebuilt variants on top of that. It was the flagship of EMD's -2 line, and for years, the best-selling diesel locomotive in the world. Nearly every major railroad in North America bought them, and most bought them by the hundreds. The spec sheet is almost boringly reasonable, and that's the whole point. A 16-cylinder 645 E3 engine making 3,000 horsepower, 6 axles for grip and stability, a new HTC truck that rode beautifully and gripped the rail hard. There was no exotic 20-cylinder gamble like the SD45, no bleeding edge risk, just EMD taking everything it had learned over 30 years and perfecting it. The SD42 was reliable, powerful enough for almost any job, and simple enough to keep running forever. The result was a locomotive that railroads simply could not wear out or improve upon. It hauled coal, grain, intermodal, mixed freight, everything everywhere, for decades. When newer, flashier engines came and went, the SD42 just kept working. Crews trusted it completely. Shops knew every bolt. It became the universal standard against which every other locomotive was measured. Here's the stat that says it all. Both CSX and Norfolk Southern, two of the largest railroads on the continent, still use fleets of SD42s for regular money-making freight service today, more than half a century after the design first appeared. Not as museum pieces, not as backups, as frontline power, earning revenue. That is the definition of a locomotive you can't replace. Not because there's nothing newer, there's plenty newer, but because after 50 years, nobody has built anything that does the everyday work of railroading better, simpler, or more dependably than the SD42. It is, quite simply, the greatest freight locomotive ever built, so which one would you have refused to give up? Drop it in the comments. If you love the iron that built this continent, subscribe, because next time, we're diving into the engines that were too powerful to survive.